Yeah, the last thing I was just going to ask you, we touched on this a little bit, but like, if you did have a chance to hang out with Bob for a few hours, like, what would you do and what would you talk about?
Well, I talk about Larry, and I talk about travel. I do a lot of travel, and Bob knew that. We talk. That was one thing. I couldn't go on a tour one time or something because I was in a Caribbean or something, and the next time he'd say, "Oh, yeah, we missed you. Where were you in the Caribbean?" And I told him, he said, "Oh, you got to go to Nevis. That's where he had a boat, an 80-foot sailboat that he kept in Nevis." And he said, "You ought to go to Nevis." And so that's one of the things I would talk to him about travel. I mean, nobody's traveled more than him. And he used to, on the way to the concert, the bus would pull off the road, and we'd stop at where Buddy Holly died, the plane crash in Iowa.
Did you stop at that place specifically in Clear Lake?
Yeah, Clear Lake. We stopped there, middle of the night, get out, and then we went to a place called Dickeyville, which is I don't know, some priest took a bunch of stones and made a building out of it, and it's pretty interesting. And Larry said, "Boy, Bob would really like this. Let's stop there." And then we, on the CB, tell the driver, "They're pulling Dickeyville." One time we were at a place, at a hotel, and there was a guy, a one-man band, a drum playing, and whistles, and the one-man band playing everything. And Larry said, "God, Bob would love this." And so we went and knocked his room at 2 o'clock in the morning or something. "Bob, come on down. I want you to see something." And he'd go, "Oh, okay." And he'd come down and, "Oh, yeah, it was good." I know that was another thing, that I kind of just remembered. But no, it's. I would love to talk to him about travel and Larry, and then music. I don't know enough about music. I mean, his Theme Time Radio Hour is so unbelievably informative. I mean, his knowledge, and he's such a genius that I'm sure he remembers what he talks about. Who's on the album and what there was, and it's a fascinating thing. So I would love talking to him about. I mentioned Theme Time Radio would be something I'd love to talk to him about. Not only tell him how wonderful it is, but hear some of his input. I wish it would happen. I don't know if it ever will. I'm not going to be obsessive about it. I mean, that wouldn't work. It's just going to happen naturally. And I hope someday it does. That's all I can say. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't, Yeah, he'd be, and my wife says, why don't we invite him over? Why don't we just, but that's so sad that could never happen. I mean, to have him here with 6 people, 6 people he knew, and so it wouldn't happen. It just wouldn't happen. I mean, we've had Chris Christopherson here in this living room. We've had Leon Russell in this living room. We've had a lot of people because of Bob and Larry, really. I mean, we go up to Leon Russell and say, we're friends of Bob Dylan's and and Larry, and so no problem. And then one time Gino sat down and played with Leon Russell, and Leon Russell just stopped and said, "Gino, you can play with me anytime," because Gino is so amazing and he's so good. And then we wound up saying, "Well, come on back here." And he came back here. He played the piano, and we had Leon Russell here with his girlfriend. He had a girlfriend with him at the time, and so we've had a bunch of musicians here, and it would be so cool to have Bob be one of them. They are all comfortable with it. They all work out, be fine. It would just be fine, and he wouldn't. It wouldn't be uncomfortable for him, other than the fact everything's uncomfortable for him. He's funny. Definitely funny. I love his sense of humor. But just the one where we're sitting at the bench and he says, "I hope someone's famous there," and I said, "Oh, there will be." "Yeah, but I wish it was Rock." "Oh, well," that kind of is more of the sense of humor. He never really told me jokes, but he has a really, really wit. I mean, that's one of the things. That's one of the things, his humor. I wish I could remember more specifically, but it's very prominent in what I know about him. He's generous and he's funny. Those are 2 things that are really personal to me.
And then the last thing I just want to ask is, looking back now and thinking that kid Bobby Zimmerman went off and did what he did, and that he's still doing it. Like, what does that make you think? Like, what is it?
What a failure am I? No,
I mean, it's almost surreal that that could happen.
Yeah, no, I'm just so proud of him. I mean, it's who he is. That's why. I mean, it wasn't, I mean, his talent, he had luck, all that means it, but has something to do with it. It was Bob. Bob had the energy, he did it. He did it because of who he is. He is who he is because of all of the things he's absorbed. He's truly amazing. I mean, there's nobody. I mean, there should be a monument to him in downtown Duluth, but he stopped it one time. There was going to be, and I have a friend who writes for the paper, and we talked about obits. I said, man, when Bob Dylan passes away, the obituary, this world is gonna unbelievable. He says, we've been writing Bob Dylan's obit for 30 years. So they keep adding to it. He's gonna live forever. He's gonna live forever. I mean, he's more famous than Beethoven. And I don't know, and musicians are the ones that really understand that. When we have jam sessions, they're always playing Bob Dylan tunes because it's the one tune that everybody learned. They may never have played before together, but they all know Blowing in the Wind. They all know his classic tunes. It's truly wonderful. And Christofferson told me that. He said, wherever I go, if I play a Bob Dylan tune, I can get anybody to play with me because they're all around. Yeah, it's I mean, he's so special. He's so special, and I don't know how much he knows it. He knows he's different. He knows he's special, but I think he's going to have to be dead 100 years, just like Beethoven is, before people really know how special somebody like that is. I think he'll just he'll live forever, and it's truly amazing. It's truly amazing what he's done. I don't know. It'd be interesting to ask him what he thinks he's going to be, but he knows he's going to live forever, and that's why he does what he does. I mean, he doesn't stop. I mean, he's my age. He's 83 years old. He's out there every day. He can't play the guitar like he used to because he's got arthritis, so he's playing the piano. He's still creating. He's creating art and paintings, and he's an amazing person. I was just at a bar the other night, and a guy came up to me and said, "Oh, I'm really glad to see somebody else in this bar old like me." I said, "Oh, really? How old are you?" 71. Yeah, I had 10 years on her, So, I mean, I'm used to being the oldest person in the room, and so is Bob. I mean, Bob is the oldest person wherever he goes. Everybody around him worships him. It's truly amazing. I mean, he's got the energy. I've seen him in a bathing suit at a pool. It's not something anybody would want to see. He's not a bodybuilder, but look at him on stage. It's like, he's amazing. I mean, the Rolling Stones, the same thing. Mick Jagger. I go to concert, I'm exhausted just tapping my foot, or keeping and then running around. And Bob doesn't do that much energy on stage, but he's right there. He's
still got the drive to do it.
Absolutely. I mean, 200 gigs a year still? I mean, I don't think he's happy anyplace else except on the road. I really believe, where does he live? Well, his home's here, his home's there, Castle in Scotland, he's got everything, all that stuff. But I really believe he's happy in the bus. He really is, on the road. And Willie Nelson kind of has about that a little bit. And I think that's his home. I mean, he's got wife, he's got kids, he gets along with them all.
I think when you're artistic like he is and you see the world through that lens, it helps to constantly be moving from place to place and having new scenery. That seems to be something that he thrives with.
Right. I think anything new can excite him. He sees excitement in something new. And traveling as much as he does, it's not easy to see new things anymore, in my opinion. The world has become, there's the vanishing varieties. There's no differences anymore. there's a Bennington's and an Applebee's everywhere you go. There's a McDonald's in any country. It's real. I mean, yeah, there are differences and there, social differences and so on, but it really has become more, a lot less individualized.
He's also, he uses that imagery of that bygone America, the old weird America. Every small town had different restaurants and different stores and,
Exactly.
Roadside attractions and
Well,
Route
his
66.
paintings, especially, he does all those roadside attraction paintings.
Like, I think of him as being from that era, because that seems to be like what he,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I'm sure he noticed it because he appreciates a roadside diner. He appreciates there aren't many of those around anymore, and he puts one. He paints one. So yeah, I think he's from that area. I mean, he is. He's a Minnesotan, even though he doesn't like to admit it sometimes. He's from a small town in Hibbing. He had an interesting growing up. I mean, he grew up differently than I did, but not that much different. I mean, there was a time where we were growing up together, and then, then we aren't, he went on his way and I went on mine. But I mean, I can't say enough about him. I love doing these things. I love talking about who he is to me. And the fact that I had a relationship with him is just something to be cherished in my mind, and I respect him so much. He told me off a couple of times that I remember. One time we were standing in a hotel room, and I was inside, and the screen door was shut, and he was on the outside, and through the screen he said, "Look, you don't tell anybody where we're going." He said, if someone asks, that's what he said. If someone asks if we're going to New York, you tell them we're going to Hawaii. And it kind of was like telling me, but I was very early on the tour with him, and he was kind of giving me the rules that he played by, and no cameras. You learn no cameras right away and all that. So at some point I was kind of, oh, okay, yes, Bob, whatever you say. I was not kind of afraid of crossing him or doing something wrong, but longevity, I mean, I was there a long time, many years, for a long time, so I must have cut the mustard somewhere along the line and didn't irritate him to the point where he wrote a song about how much he hated me or something.
Oh, that reminds me of one other thing I was going to ask about, which is like there were years in the 80s where, he was slurring his words and he was mumbling a lot. Like, his career's gone through these ups and downs where he seems very motivated and very together, and then it seems other years, like, is he not taking care of himself very well? Like, could you sense that off stage, or like, did you think like, wow, Bob's playing a lot better now than he did 5 years ago?
Well, I definitely noticed an improvement. I noticed him improving over the years. I mean, when people say G.E. Smith taught him a lot, I was around when he was there, and it was true. I mean, Bob was playing the guitar differently and better than he ever played before. And so I noticed that improvement. But he wanted to improve. I don't think it was an accident. I mean, I think they talk about his harmonica. I know some harmonica players today that kind of put him down. You call that harmonica playing. But he was playing harmonica very poorly back at the coffee houses and got a lot better. I definitely noticed that. But that just goes with being on the road and learning and studying and practicing, and everybody can do that. I mean, they get better at what they do if they do it enough. But I can't, the mumbling, it was almost, in my mind, always kind of a style. I don't know that it was, physically something going wrong. I think it was just a style, that he wasn't as concerned about how clear his words were to other people, you kind of struggle to hear what he's saying. It's like my mom said, I didn't understand a word he said. I love listening to other people sing Dylan, because I can hear the words so much better. You hear, oh, is that what that is, You go to a concert, he can be playing a song, be 2 minutes into the song before you realize what song it is, to me. Oh, I recognize that version, or that sentence or something, because he does so many varieties, so many things different. And that's noticeable on his bootlegs, it's fun hearing his bootlegs because it's not something you hear on stage, you know, it's a different thing.
Even in the last couple of years, you know, with these brand new songs from Rough and Rowdy Ways, we saw the very first show we did in 2021 after the pandemic, and he was playing the album versions of the songs. And now if you listen to it, if you check in every couple of weeks for the last 2-3 years, it's like his goal is to like explore the songs. Like, I'm gonna play this, but let's see what happens if I sing it this with this, you know, this way, and then change the tempo and change the key, and like
Exactly.
You know,
Oh, exactly.
his own music is like a playground. You know?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, he does that with so many songs. He's been doing it for a long time. I mean, Rough and Rowdy is definitely, I notice it, but it's just currently what he's doing. But he did that with, I mean, so many of the old songs he would do differently on stage.
But it's like, it makes me think like he doesn't hold those things on a pedestal. Like, oh, I made a perfect song, so I have to play it perfectly. Like, to him, it's just something he did, and it's his right to do it how he wants.
Right, right. And that was one way, but it might have been good, but let's see if this way is good too. I mean, no, there's no question. But that's his mind, and his mind is just so broad, and he just, it's, you know, I don't think, I wish I was close enough to understand his mind. I don't think anybody is close enough to that. But maybe there are some people. But
Well, you've been closer than most people.
well, you
got
know,
that.
in a way I have. Oh, yeah, I have been closer than most people, and I can't say how much I appreciate that. But my contact was really pretty far away from him compared to Larry, for example. I mean, you know, I mean, I was lucky. I was lucky to be there. I was honored to be there. Some people will say blessed, but I don't believe in blessed, so I don't think there is a blessed thing. But I was lucky and honored to be around him, and I really, really appreciate that.
Did he ever talk religion with you? Judaism or Christianity?
Yes. He's much more religious than I am, still, for sure.
Was he proselytizing or like
Not proselytizing.
trying to convince you of things,
Well,
or just having philosophical
there was an event
conversations?
at the Hasidic temple in St. Paul that Larry Keegan was honored, and Bob was there, and I was there, and he did say, "Why don't you why aren't you more Jewish?" You know, what the Hasidics were very Jewish, and he was very into it. I don't think he was practicing. I mean, like Louis Kemp, who's Hasidic and is very religious, and you know, all the things. Doesn't talk on the phone on the Shabbos and this and that, and constantly wearing a kippah and trying, you know. So Louis Kemp is a very, very serious person and a good friend of Bob's. Always was a good friend. I think they were never as close as Larry, or at the end they weren't as close as Larry for sure. But Louis knew Bob very well. Louis traveled with him, and so Bob would be, and then we kind of, I remember Larry and Bob and I one time in a conversation, it was really me just listening to them talking about Christianity. And it wasn't trying to talk Larry into becoming a Christian, it was more Larry trying to understand why Bob was a Christian at that time, if that was what he was. And you know, it wasn't to me, and I was just kind of overhearing it. And I never felt that it was anything more than exploring it. I don't believe he, I don't know, I mean, I hate to say it because maybe he did, but I don't believe he believed what the most Christian thoughts are. I mean, I just can't, I don't believe that, because even though he sang about it, he talked about it, Senor, you know, he wanted people to hear about it. So I don't know, I wasn't around much at that time, and it interests me, but I know that, like I say, I don't think he's very religious, but he's very spiritual, no question about that. And I think in the spiritual vein, he's exploring everything.
I was gonna say it's exploring, trying things out. You know, just like I'm gonna make some Frank Sinatra records, or I'm gonna I'm gonna dip my toe in Christianity and see what it's all about.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, exactly. And more than dipping his toe.
Yeah,
and
for a couple of years there.
Yeah, he jumped out into his head, top of his head, but,
But he does that with everything. Even he didn't just play a few Sinatra songs. It's like if I'm gonna try Frank Sinatra, I'm gonna make 5 albums of it.
yeah, no, I mean, that is, and people don't get that. People, even Dylan fans say, well, Frank Sinatra, but I get it. I get Frank Sinatra. I listen to Frank Sinatra often myself, and so the fact that he did it made, "Some Enchanted Evening" is one of my favorite Bob Dylan songs. When you ask me if it's my favorite, that's one of my favorites. Only because nobody else cares for it. Nobody else likes it. I think it's cool. Nothing like his earliest stuff, but I mean, they're everything. It's just so, there is no favorite. It's just,
The whole journey, you're on it with him.
And
from start to finish.
anytime I hear one, I say, oh yeah, that's my favorite. Yeah, this time that's right. But they go one to the next, and let me think. One time I said to him, he said that God gave names to all the animals. You know that one he does?
Yeah.
And
In the beginning, a long time ago.
a long time ago, and he ends it with a snake or something, about a weird ending. And I said to him, Bob, how come you never play that on a concert? I said, I'd like to hear that. He said, I will never play that. I said, why? Because I want to hear it? He said, I will never play that at a concert. So that was just something, he sang the song, he did it. It was a kid's song, and there's a kid's album that it's on. So I kind of was embarrassed to say, that he said he would never do. And when I said to him, you ought to have big videos of you playing, and then he never had a big video playing. It was like, well, if Dick Cohn liked it, I definitely don't want to do it. Like, I'm too normal to do that, I don't know. So I've thought that other times too, but yeah, no, I don't like Maggie's Farm, which he does every time. I don't know why I don't.
Well, he hasn't in recent years, but when
yeah.
I first started going to shows, you'd always get Maggie's
No,
Farm.
it was one that I kind of didn't like. I don't know why. Not sure why. It was just, not that one again. Lay Lady Lay is not one of my favorites. It's too popular. The non-Dylan people like that one. No, I like more of the obscure stuff and his deeper tracks. And
I always say, I think my 3 favorites are Street Legal, Shot of Love, and Oh Mercy.
no, really,
Yeah.
that's interesting. I like his earlier ones than the very first ones.
Well, I love them all, but
Yeah, me too. I mean, me too.
but the '60s albums I've heard so many times that I'd rather put on Empire Burlesque because I haven't heard it so many times.
Right. Well, my son, I mean, I really don't play albums much at all. I listen to echoes and I have a few CDs that I get, but I don't play vinyl at all. But I have a bunch of vinyl. I still have a basement full of vinyl, and my son wants it really bad. In fact, he just bought a house. He's put a whole new music room in, and he's got a shelf just for my vinyl already built.
Ready to go.
So that's good. And I mean, I don't even know what I've got in there. I've got a lot of old stuff. I've got a lot of old Dylan albums for sure. Some of the very early ones, and they're valuable according to people. Most of them have been pretty heavily played if they're valuable, or if they're the early ones by me. But it's the fact that he can stay so current, and people say that about me, and I don't think that's exactly true about me. I'm still living in the past a lot, but he has a way of just really staying current and being on top of it and being on the leading edge. I don't even know that I don't think it's planned. I don't think he's thinking I should do that. I think it just is, that's the way he is. I guess. I mean, that's kind of what I think. I haven't talked this much on camera about Bob in my whole life, so this is kind of interesting. I'd love a copy of it, by the way,
Yeah.
on a flash drive or something. Yeah, no, it's really an honor to be around him and to have been around him, and I would love to see him again. Not just see him on stage. I mean, in fact, the truth is, going to any concert without a backstage pass is not something I enjoy. I do it, but I'm spoiled. I mean, if you don't have a laminate or a backstage pass that you can get the crowd and get away from the crowd and don't have to go into that claustrophobic exit that you have to go through, I can't do that. I don't do that anymore. And I was spoiled. I was spoiled by being able to go backstage, and not only for Bob. Because of Bob, we would go backstage to so many musicians. If someone would come to town and Larry and I say, let's go there, and we go and just mention Bob's name, and somehow we get through. And Larry being in a wheelchair caused some notification that, oh, there's a guy in a wheelchair. In fact, one time I was backstage, and a guy came back, and there was another guy in a wheelchair that Larry knew, and they were talking. And he said, how did you get there? He says, I just said I was in a wheelchair, and they thought I was you, is what the guy said to Larry. People knew Larry from that, and Larry met a lot of these people on his tour, the band and all those people. So when they were in town, Larry would go right there, and I'd be right with them, and so we met all these great musicians. It was really a fascinating thing, and again, it's Bob Dylan. Oh, come on in. You just have to, I have my laminate, I'd show, and one time we were in Chicago, and I was with my son and my wife. We were driving back, and we wanted to stay at a hotel, and when we were there, Dylan's bus was there, and I said, oh, well, Bob's in town. Didn't even know it, and so I went to breakfast, and I ran into Jeff Rosen, and I said, I want to go to the concert tonight, can you get me a pass? And he said, call me. 15 phone calls later, he said, yeah, there'll be some tickets at the front window for you. So I go to the front window, I pick up the tickets, expecting a pass, but I didn't have one. So I went in and I had my laminate, and I started using my laminate because I was going to go see Bob. I'd show my laminate all the way up till I get to somebody I knew who would get me in. Well, at one point, some guy grabbed me and said, that's not a current pass. Come on, you come with me. And he kind of jerked me away, and my wife and my son ran away. They were afraid. And the head security comes up, and he says, I'm going to have to take this away from you. I said, no, you're not. I said, I'm an old friend of Bob's. I know him. I've had it for a long time. I just wanted to get back and say hi to him. I got tickets from Jeff. And so I was struggling to make sure he didn't take my pass away, and something on the phone, on his earphone, he says, what? Okay, I'll be right there. He says, okay, you can go. And he ran away because something else happened and let me go. So then I went back and I talked to Jeff Rosen and thanked him for the tickets and everything. Ambassador East and West is where they stayed, and that's where we wanted to stay, at the hotel. But I didn't get to see Bob that time. I saw him perform. But that was kind of a scary moment of my backstage pass being taken away from me. In Florida, I stood by a dumpster for a half hour trying to get in, and just nobody would come, and I couldn't get to the people I knew back there. It was after the concert. I knew Bob was gone, and they were busy taking down, and so I kind of gave up.
Well, very few people get to his level of fame. Even he's famous to famous people.
Oh, absolutely.
He has to function in life day to day. He has to have this bubble around him of people.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Exactly. I mean, his security is pretty minimal compared to what he should have. But it's because he's so recluse and he's so away from everybody. He kind of does his own security in a way. His security guy is the same guy that does the Rolling Stones, and Jim something or other.
Jim Callahan?
Callahan, thank you. Jim Callahan. And so he was great. Jim Callahan was a wonderful guy. I liked him a lot. He was always good to me. I remember one time he gave me a laminate. I said, oh, well, I'm going to be here tomorrow too. He says, oh, I'll have to put that date on. And I whipped a felt tip pen out and gave it to him. Like I was ready for him to do that. He looked at me like, yeah, okay. And I said, why do you keep the pen? He said, I don't need it. He said, I'm not sending one of those. But then, we go to the Rolling Stones, the concert. He was there, and he Jim, it's me, Dale, come on back. And we're backstage at the Rolling Stone. I mean, man, that was really a thing, you know. Lenny Kravitz and I were talking on payphones, we weren't in cell phones yet, talking on payphones backstage next to each other. I'm talking to my son, hey, I'm backstage, I'm talking to Lenny Kravitz right here. Lenny, this is my son. He goes, what's his name, Matt? Hi, Matt. You know, and it was just like really interesting. One time I was backstage and Jessica Lange and Sam, what's his name?
Peckinpah?
Yeah, Sam Peckinpah.
Yeah,
and
the director,
and Jessica Lange and I were sitting alone in a room. And they came back and they said, Sam, Bob wants to see you. And so Sam gets up and walks away. And Jessica and I said, well, we're not on the cutting. We got cut, we're not on the team. And so Jessica Lange and I sat and we had a conversation, and I've seen her several times and I mentioned it to her, we've talked about it. I've run into her a couple of times because she's kind of lived here around here for a while. And so that was kind of me and Jessica Lange didn't make the cut that night. One time we went down to a guy named Mike Veck who owned the St. Paul
the
Saints.
Yeah.
Was a Bob Dylan fan. And Bob was playing down in Rochester. And Larry said to Veck, I'd like to introduce you to Bob. Oh, I love it, and all that. And then Larry was sick. Larry got real sick and he couldn't go. So he wrote a letter. Bob, this is Bob Veck, he's baseball, blah, all that. He said, would I take it down and get it to Bob? So Mike Veck and I, and there's another guy, Tom Mischke was with us. He's a radio guy, a podcast guy, and one other. Oh no, that was it. And my wife, and we went down there, and I ran into a friend who kind of hung with us all the way, and we're sitting in the front row at the auditorium, and I got the letter back to security. I gave it to Jim, and we're sitting there, and just concert's supposed to start at 8 o'clock. It always is 20 minutes later, but at 8 o'clock, Jim comes out and says, Bob, come on back. Bob wants to talk to you. So Mike Veck and I and Mischke and all of us, except for the guy who kind of joined us, he kind of came too, and all right, come on. So we all go backstage. We're back there, and Bob comes out, and I introduced him. Bob, this is Mike Veck and the Twins. And at that time, Bob was interested in doing stadium tours.
Ballpark
tours.
Sure.
This was before that.
Yep.
And so he shook his hand and I introduced anybody, and I said, and this is my wife Val, and he gave Val a really nice two-handed shake like that. Everyone else was that limp, he does a limp shake, but my wife still talks about she's the only one ever got a hardcore handshake from him. But yeah, and we're back there, we're talking about baseball and everything, and then we left, and Mike Veck didn't say a word for the next 4 hours. He just, with his mouth open, he hung there, he sat there like that. We went to a restaurant to eat, and what did you think of that? That was wonderful. I mean, it was really kind of unbelievable how blown away Mike Veck was for that. And Bob started doing ballpark tours.
Were you at the one at Midway where he said hi to Larry from the stage?
Yes, I was. Yes, he said yes.
My old friend Larry or something.
There's a couple times he's acknowledged Larry. One time we were at one of those stations and he said, "This reminds me of Mexico," from the stage at a different, not the time the power went out, another time. And do you remember this, Larry? He'd say a couple of times.
Yeah, Romance in Durango.
Yeah.
And he said, "Remember Durango, Larry?"
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Larry was really proud of that. He loved that. But that just goes to show you how close Bob was to Larry. I mean, he could have called out a lot of people, but he didn't. He called out Larry. Larry was the most unbelievable guy I ever knew. He had an energy. He was brilliant. He just oozed friendly energy. People, I meet people. And they'll say, "Oh, I knew Larry Keegan," and that's our common. We both were in love with Larry Keegan. We both traveled, not together. Met a girl just recently. She says, "Oh, I traveled to Mexico with Larry one time." "Oh, I did many times. Tell me about it." And Larry would go to the bulletin board at the University of Minnesota, say, need a rider to share gas expenses to go to Mexico. And these hippies, beautiful women, would show up. I mean, they were some of the most beautiful women that he was with. He never had a problem being with a woman. He was very self-conscious, and even his ultimate, not quite his wife, but the last woman he wound up with, Carol, I remember when he was dating her. She was a nurse in a hospital when he was in the hospital. And we used to, he had a trach, and he couldn't talk when they were doing this, and so we had a clear glass board with alphabet on it and some stuff. He put a pencil in his mouth, we'd hold the board up, and he would, this is before computers were doing it, he held up the board and he'd point out letters, and we'd read what he was trying to say. And there was a girl in the hospital, a girl, what's her name? She could only move one eyebrow. Do you know that song? Dylan's daughter's husband.
Peter Himmelman?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Peter Himmelman has a song out, a woman with the strength of 1,000 men, or something like that, is the name of the song. And it's about a woman who, she could only move one eyebrow. And they had a hookup to a computer. Larry loved this woman and I mean, respected her. And
I don't have an answer for that.
When I say that one word, computer. Anyhow, so she could, that's how she talked. She'd move her eyebrow and she could move a cursor around. It was unbelievable. And she sued the state. They wanted to put her in a nursing home, and she sued the state and said, no, I want to be home. And with home care, she was cheaper than in a nursing home, and she won. And Larry testified, and it was great. It was, her name was Susan Margolis, I think was her name. She was some, anyway, I got off on her. But Larry met his wife, or his final girlfriend, in a hospital. She was a nurse, and he could then start to talk. They put the trach in, and he could talk, and he said, I'm going to take her out. Oh, really, what should I do? Can I kiss her? Well, what should I do? And he talked to me about it, and he was so scared and nervous about it. But she was a really special woman too, just because she could relate to him, and they fell in love, and they were lovers for a long time, and they really had a great relationship. But he had women. We used to travel to Mexico with a new woman every time, and sometimes two women. He was an amazing guy. Larry was an amazing guy. Every place he went, he made friends, and the stories of Larry Keegan are equally as exciting as Bob Dylan's. In fact, maybe more, because there were more of them and closer. I can't say enough about Larry Keegan. I want that to be known. He was a remarkable person. Like I say, but Larry Keegan is the most remarkable guy I know, and his friend Bob Dylan.